Welcome, welcome. Those of you who are dropping in. First one or two of you to drop in, just go ahead and let me know if you can see and hear me. Been working, but you never know. And while you guys are trickling in, we'll get some stuff out of the way for the people who are rewatching this later. Just remember that for everyone who is in my Patreon, link will be in the description after I finish this live stream. All my most recent videos have the link. What's up, Stab and Joe? At the end of this month, I will do a drawing of all the Patreon paid subscribers to get the Leehoos emergency weather radio with flashlight, hand crank, and battery, like built-in battery pack, water resistant. And I had a lot of good experiment. Not a good experiment. I had a lot of good experience experimenting with this. And the battery on the light lasted for like 72 hours straight. And it gave me several minutes after just 30 seconds of hand cranking. It gave me like 4 minutes. And I'm also going to throw in this fire extinguisher bottle. It's like a throwable or passive one and an emergency light. So that whole group of stuff is going to go to a lucky person on Patreon who's a paid subscriber. So go check that out after the fact. Audio seems to be working. So what's up, guys? This is going to be a quick one tonight. I want to finish watching this Jets game. It's not preparedness related, but my buddy and I are on a scorching heater of NFL bets. We started off 10-0, and then I realized that we were about to surpass that octopus from years ago, who was there was this octopus that they had guessing World Cup tournament, like one of the World Cup tournaments. I forget what year it was. It's like 2011, something like that. And he correctly by like picking a treat for each team. He would like go over his tank and they had a mark for each team and he would pick the treat. And he went like 12-2 and it was Paul the Octopus and then he retired. So we were trying to beat him. And we started off 10-0 and then we had 3 today already and we kind of sucked on those earlier in the morning and only won one of them. But then I doubled down on KC, their old faithful. They came through for me, and now we're on Old Man Rodgers and the Jets. So should be fun. But the interesting thing is happening, what could affect the next week or so, which is what I'm referencing in the title for this, the October 22nd to 24th. Some of you probably know what that is, and that is the BRICS meeting in Russia. Now, I have a hunch. This is what I suspect. I suspect that the people like you and I, the people who are really plugged into what's going on with the global financial system, who are not normies, have mostly priced in the fact that this meeting is taking place. So while I do think there is a chance, small chance, that they could at this meeting very explicitly come out and say that this is going to be backed specifically by this amount of gold and all this stuff, and specifically referencing gold and the desire to reach the dollar. There's certain things they could do that would make gold and silver like absolutely skyrocket immediately after this meeting. But I suspect that they're going to be a little more coy about it, a little more circumspect. And this meeting will mostly be about the, you see, I've got an article here about the actual BRICS pay system, the technical elements of it, who's going to be invited, how to become part of the BRICS system, and that sort of stuff. And because of that they're going to be a little more circumspect about exactly how gold is going to be used and exactly how they're going to replace the dollar. They're not probably going to address that directly in my mind. My guess is that the price of gold has already priced in this meeting for the most part, and you might see a little bit of a spike as the stuff trickles out. But then I'm guessing, my hunch, it's just a hunch, my hunch is that this is going to be a sell the news type of situation, and we could actually see a very short-term dip in gold and silver. I hope, because we're at all-time highs. I just posted that I bought at basically all-time highs, and I have zero concerns about that. Of course, I would rather get it as cheaply as possible, but I have zero concerns of transferring. And you're not buying gold. Remember, you're selling Federal Reserve notes. Gold is money. This is money. Federal Reserve notes, not money. So, it's whose money? I still think BRICS will fall apart. Too much chance for arguing over whose money is worth what. Well, that's the thing. There's not going to be any arguing because you get to use your own currency. And the BRICS system, the unit, is just for settlements, and it's going to be more high. The SWIFT system and the dollar system is not actually that good. It was the only reason that it's really great, or not great, but the only reason that it's has such a market share, a hegemony, is because it's universal. And so it's just simpler when everyone's using the same thing. But people have to like use they have to store dollars. They have to, so with the modern technology, they're going to have some digital elements to this BRICS system, to the unit. And especially with every single global fiat currency just plummeting in value compared to real things, not necessarily in relation to each other, but in relation to real things, fiat currencies are just tanking. Something that's going to have, or allegedly have, partial at least backing by commodities probably is going to be appealing. That countries can't just print this stuff, like, because really the entire global system is now dependent on a single country that is obviously in a inflation debt spiral that they cannot escape from. We're spending 24% or something of all income tax revenue right now is going to interest payments on the debt. And that's only going to continue to get worse, especially as the dollar continues to weaken and we have to spend more and more dollars to do the same things. And more people are going to become dependent on the government. And it's just going to, that spiral is going to continue. And people of the world, despite what Americans think, are not so stupid that they don't know that this is happening. And it was been prevented from happening before because just the United States would bully everybody into it, take out Libya and Iraq and everyone else who tried to leave the system. And that's really what this war in Ukraine is about. And I've always said that, is that the current global system, which is petrodollar, cannot survive major countries leaving it, because that's the only reason why it was still working, is because everyone used it. The Federal Reserve notes are worthless. They're utterly worthless. And they're not really better in any way than any other fiat currency aside from that. The universal, up to this point, universally accepted nature of it. So it's going to be quick. It's not, I don't think we're going to see a trickle of like people slowly leaving the dollar. It's like like the man always says, or Miles Franklin, Andy Scheckman, it's going to be little by little, and then all at once. That's how it's going to happen. And as soon as these countries know that it's just, because I mean, look at the things that we've done just to Russia, of seizing their money and stuff, and all these countries, like they don't want to have to worry about that stuff. And these are countries that can't deal with it in the way that Russia can. You know, Russia survived that. A lot of these smaller countries wouldn't be able to do that. So if you're having a system where say, we'll recognize your sovereignty to use your own financial system, your own currency, this is going to be backed by commodities, and at the same time the US dollar is getting weaker and weaker and weaker, then a lot of people are going to make the jump. So we'll see what happens. But like I said, I suspect that this meeting is going to be a lot more about the technical elements of how this is going to be used as a clearance and settlement currency, what the standards are for people entering or applying to the BRICS system and so forth. So I suspect that there will be this is just a hunch, like I said, but if you have any dry powder, I would hold on to it for the next week or two. If you were thinking about buying, I just bought the gold a week ago because I'd rather have it, and there is a chance that it could, skyrocket after this. But don't be too worried, because I suspect that it was more likely to have a little dip, as more of like a buy the or sell the news type of thing. And once the actual conference happens, that it will be a sell the news type of thing. And a lot of people who have seen this run up in the past few weeks, who are traders and not necessarily stackers, but have anticipated that, because it is at all-time highs now. We went over 2,700. That, well, some of those people will take the profits, and then we could see a potential dip, which is a good time to buy, because we know long-term that the dollar is just going to accelerate and accelerate and accelerate. Somebody says, my wife graduates Army basic training that week. Wow, I figure on you're going to be an Army wife? Figure on being in South America by Xmas. Yeah, maybe. Mr. Phil says, I still think BRICS will fall apart. Too much chance for arguing over we already won. Yeah, I don't think so, because it's not, it's too needed. So if they do it right and make a system that actually works, it doesn't require any of these individual members to really give up sovereignty. It's just for unilateral or bilateral or multilateral trade. It's not for within the countries, so doesn't really have to be too complicated or dramatic to work. But there was an interesting, I want to read an article for you guys. It says about why, I think it was on Vox Day. It was actually by some kind of blog called the Didactic Mind, something explaining about some of the details behind what they're trying to do with the BRICS. So I will just read this. It says, and I quote, each individual BRICS nation is at a different stage of development along the path of having a proper banking system. That's what I was referencing here. Therefore, trying to create a unified messaging and money transfer platform is colossally difficult, like what you were referencing. The back-end infrastructure of global payment systems is not easy to build. Take my word for it on this. It is nor is it a trivial matter to get different national payment systems to work together. I have barely even begun to describe the problems involved, and I'm by no means a deep knowledge subject matter expert on the issue. But we are now seeing the beginnings of a new financial order coming together. This is what I would. And that BRICS payment and prototype is the first demonstration of the front-end technology. Whether the back-end technology is fully operational is very much open to question, but it does seem to be getting there. End quote. So that's what I'm saying. I think that this meeting is going to be a lot about explaining to people how this will work on the back end and all that stuff. So back to there, they said, and I quote, the importance of this development cannot be overstated. If the architects of the Western financial system are paying any attention whatsoever to the upcoming BRICS summit in Kazan, which starts very soon. In fact, the BRICS Business Forum wrapped up just today, then they should be sweating bullets. The advent of a true globally scalable, secure, stable, and reliable BRICS Plus payment system will allow for rapid digital settlements between BRICS Plus central banks. That was one of the original ideas behind this system, to use some sort of digital currency backbone to settle in national currencies between different countries. I had heard many different ideas proposed, ranging from a stable coin of some kind to a gold-backed and metals-backed currency to a new currency built on a basket of currencies, like the old Bancor idea that John Maynard Keynes proposed as the fundamental unit of exchange within the old Bretton Woods system, or the special drawing rights SDRs that the IMF has the ability to issue. If, or rather, in my opinion, when this becomes a reality, in whatever form it takes, the dominance of the dollar is done. This is not hyperbole. Think about it. Why would anyone want to use SWIFT and pay the quite exorbitant in relative terms fees to send money through a literal cartel of correspondent banks to transfer money overseas when they could go through a digital system with far lower fees and transact directly in their local currencies with local exchange rates? And if people can do this peer-to-peer or business-to-business, what need is there for the dollar? End quote. There is none, and there will be none. And that's going to be big. So long-term, to the moon, or rather back to the stars and where it was formed. It is the dollar rather will be just absolutely decimated and bloody demised, as the man says, and real things are going to be back in recognized as further value. But economics always used to be about the allocation of the Earth's scarce resource. The dollar is not a scarce resource, and it is quickly not becoming a resource at all. It is becoming a liability and albatross around the neck of a lot of these banking systems and country and financial systems. So gold and silver, obviously, I love because it's universal. It has all of the properties that are needed when discussing currency. And of course, silver has all those properties as well as being one of the more useful metals because of its unique physical properties, the most conductive metal known. But everything else that is real is going to have the same benefit. So it just has to be something that you can take advantage of that. So I definitely think that land and real estate, although I think like real estate as in buildings, will at some point, especially commercially, will suffer a big price dip because a lot of it, same as with used cars, like used cars and stuff like that, there's a lot of things that are still physical items, but they're not really needed nearly as much as they are being used right now. So they're not needed in a survival sense. There's a lot of commercial real estate that isn't actually needed. A lot of used vehicles that people could keep the current ones they have for a lot longer, not swap out every year, that sort of thing. A lot of vehicles sitting on lots. So just because something is a real physical item that exists does not necessarily mean it will rise in true purchasing power as the dollar collapses, even if it rises in nominal terms. But I think land, especially potentially productive land or agriculturally productive land, is a hugely beneficial thing to own if you can. I definitely want to look into that. I don't know anything about the process of buying or like leasing agricultural land, but that would be if I have any serious amounts of money, that's one thing I would look into. For those of you who, if you have like multiple hundreds of thousands or more of money and you don't want to have, just bricks and bricks and bricks of gold stacked in your house, buying productive, like arable land somewhere that you could just lease out to a farmer. You don't have to farm it yourself. I think that would be a hugely beneficial and potentially profitable endeavor. Definitely maintain your purchasing power. And if you can get in with the specific farmers and make some deals with them, it might be a great way to, if you have, find some good regenerative farmers who are going to not, grow GMO stuff, or they'll raise livestock, grass fed without trying to use all these crazy mRNA vaccines on the cows and everything, then you could potentially have a good source of, clean, real food for yourself too. So I think that'd be huge. Yep, 24 karat buffalo. These are great. The interesting thing about these is that, thank you very much, Dupsy Daisy. I appreciate that. Thank you. If you have any topics or questions you want, let me know. The good thing about the buffaloes, and I had another topic I wanted to talk about with the silver specifically related to this, is that these are the buffaloes are an official coin. This is a $50 US coin. Obviously, it's worth far, far more in its metal value than $50, just like a penny pre-1982, I think, is worth more in copper than it is in its face value. But it would be very difficult and weird, I think, and it would unlikely for the government to confiscate or make illegal or anything officially issued by them U.S. currency for them to say you can't have it anymore. So that applies to the junk silver too, of course. And these are far more dense. And for tax purposes, obviously I'm not a tax professional, so consult some super nerd. But if you are traveling and things like that, or if you want to get really weird with it, if I want to pay someone, like if I'm buying a car or paying you to build a bunker, this is a $50 coin. So if I say, I gave you $50, you can write honestly on your taxes, you paid me $50. That's what I gave you. Just like you don't have to go in there and say, if I paid you in pennies, you wouldn't have to count the copper value of that. You just got paid in whatever the face value amount is. And now I will say that if you do go sell that coin, then that would create probably another taxable event for you. So like I said, consult your tax nerds. Or if you're traveling, if I'm traveling, this is $50. So if I'm declaring what I have on me, I have $50 in US currency on me, even though this in its metal value is worth $2,700. This is $50. You have to weigh the 1982 pennies, half copper and half zinc. Well, I think it's before, the ones before 1982, I believe, are the mostly copper ones. See, go back and get some of these. Wells Fargo is installing nodes or fancy ATMs inside some of their branches. Yeah, the U.S. banking system is going to be doing all sorts of weird stuff within the next few years, and I would try to stay out of it as much as possible and diversify as much as possible. And speaking of diversification, that's one of the things I wanted to talk about with regards to silver. Like I just mentioned, properties of this being U.S. currency. I think it was Bill Holter was saying that he's really stuck on. I like his material a lot, but he does seem really stuck on the idea that we're going to enter some stage, however brief or long it may be, where there is like literal barter being done with silver coins. And I do not think that is the case. I've said that for a long time. If we get to that point, we're talking like a complete collapse of Western society for that to happen. So it's not going to matter. Like none of these things I'm talking about in terms of the government and how they deal with currency versus coins is going to matter anyway. And his idea is that you should only have silver should all be junk silver. because when it gets to that point, no one's going to look at like a bar like this or a bar like this or even like a silver eagle, and they might think it's fake. Whereas the silver coins, you could easily and directly determine that they're almost certainly not fake. It's in pre-1965. And that is true. So I will say there's nothing wrong with that assessment. I just disagree that we're ever going to get to the point that he's saying, because first of all, there just isn't enough silver out there, distributed at least in a way that barter like that would be possible. And I think that there always is going to be some sort of economic system that's happening, even if we have to go back to tally sticks or bottle caps like Fallout or whatever. There just isn't enough of these silver coins around for that to be the system. So there will be some sort of system, and for any sort of even remotely modern civilization to exist, there has to be some electronic markets of some kind. And so there will be some kind of currency that exists that you will just sell your silver into. And honestly, I've never really worried about people think it's bad. People have been not contracting, but buying and selling with gold and silver for thousands and thousands of years, long before they had electronic testers and those coin balancing things which you can get and all sorts of other stuff that we have to test gold and silver. And they found a way to make sure they could get it done. So that would happen in the future if we did ever go back to that complete Mad Max scenario. But I just don't foresee that happening, luckily. And if it did, it's not going to be a widespread barter system specifically with gold and silver. Gold and silver, you'll be able to barter with it. There'll be plenty of people who want it, probably. But if it got to that point, then it would just be a direct barter system for food and stuff anyway, until you got enough of a civilization reformed to enact some kind of economy and some kind of currency. 9 more buffaloes to go. What happens at 10 buffaloes? Buffalo, 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 buffalo. Richard Monder says, I've done the same with silver. I buy it cheaper in the US at NR shares and bring it back with me. If you fly with gold, do not declare the face value. If you have to declare the value of the gold, if you just declare the face value, they will hold it. You mean that? What do you mean face value? You mean the actual metal value? It depends. If you're talking internationally, yeah, if you're talking in the US, you don't have to declare any money to begin with. But this is, like I said, this is legally US currency. It's no different than a $50 bill as far as the law is concerned. Tell your lawyers. I've never had any problems, and they always find out an X-ray machine. Yeah, if you're talking about domestically, you don't even have to declare it. You have a herd at 10. So 10 of them, 10 buffaloes is a herd. Interesting. So what's 9 buffaloes? Yeah, and I've talked, if you go, as you said, if you go back, you said declare. Yeah, and it was, I think it was Andy Scheckman who referenced that. But like I said, don't trust me on it. Go do your research. But and I'm speaking specifically from the US's treatment of this. All other countries may have their own rules, but if you're coming back into the US or whatever, there's no this is not like legal currency, it's US currency. Like I said, I'm not a tax professional, so don't listen to me. Do your own research. But like I mentioned at the beginning of this, I do think that the BRICS meeting will be mostly about those technical elements. They probably will be a little more circumspect about specifically ditching the dollar and everything else until it's really time to just boom, full switch and get everyone on board at once. And so I would not be at all be surprised to see gold and silver prices take a slight retracement, as they say, over the next week or two, which is great. I think it's terrible that it's expensive right now, because it's just a sign the dollar's dying. It makes it harder to get. I'd rather it be crushed, and so we all have a little more time to buy more. And I'm hoping that's what happens if Trump gets elected, that we get a few more years, hopefully. Although I don't think we will financially. We will get some respite from ending up in the gulag, I think. But I do think that will be another chance for people to, be a little more at ease, a little more less fear, and hopefully prices on gold and silver will come down. The 22nd to 24th CT is the BRICS meeting that's happening in Russia, where they're going to be explaining more, releasing more information on exactly how they're going to be using this unit settlement currency. So a lot of people are expecting gold and silver prices to spike. I've said that I think in this live stream today that I think that that's mostly priced in, and that's why we've seen this run up of past 2,700 and everything. And that there could be a sell the news type situation where unless they really come out and are just like, bam, gold back currency, we're ditching the dollar, fuck you, then I think we could actually see a little sell off. If they do, there's a chance they could come out there and just be like, here's the whole system, suck at dollar. And then in that case, all bets are off. But I think that's a low probability event just based on what's going on in the world right now. Russia's in a pretty good position in terms of they're winning the war in Ukraine. Obviously, it's very stressful, very expensive. It's not easy. It's not without losses on their end, but they're absolutely winning. Even Trump has come out and said that they've won. So we can hope that he wins and hope that we avoid the ending up in the gulag, which is probably what would happen to me if Kamala, within the next few years if Kamala gets elected. Hey, what's up, emergency survival tips? Columbia, Missouri does accept PM for payments of state and local taxes. That is kind of cool. Yeah, that is kind of cool. If you bring a certain amount of gold in the US, you have to file a FinCEN 105. Okay. Like I said, I don't know the specifics on the rules, but I do know that this is just US currency. But like I said, don't listen to me when it comes to tax stuff. But I do know that it's a hell of a lot easier if you did ever have to smuggle or anything, like in a guy who wrote Survival in the Killing Fields. He basically only survived and escaped because he had a couple ounces of gold that he had kept in his ratty pants sewn into the waistband for like years throughout fucking Khmer Rouge. And he was able to bribe border guards into Thailand. So he got out. So a lot easier, just a lot more dense than silver. Silver takes a lot more weight. And obviously, I think that Bitcoin and stuff will still go up, a lot of cryptos as the dollar continues to lose value. But in real like crazy SHTF scenarios, it's hard to transact and access Bitcoin, stuff like that. So certainly if you get into like EMP type scenarios and things like that. So I definitely would not personally have a huge portion of my network of crypto. Someone said boof that gold. What do you think I have this suspiciously shaped bar? No. One of my buddies was joking about that one. Like, this is the easiest one to smuggle. Now, this one isn't that much because it's just a 10-ounce silver bar. But if you had a 10-ounce gold bar like this, yeah, you could get that into the prison. Like, what movie was that? It was Christopher Walken. Was it Pulp Fiction? Where he's like, my father's watch up my ass for 30 years. Gold is gray. Yes, yes. See you in the gulag, Eric. Looking for a gulag in the warm state or the coolest? Oh, warm state, man, definitely. My blood is too thin at this point, especially if you're being underfed. You don't want to be somewhere cold, freezing your ass off. It takes more calories. Everything hurts. Working out and busting your knuckles, digging up the sulfur mines, whatever. Put me in the busting rocks in the heat versus the cold any day of the week for sure. Not a hard question for me. Nobody says, like BRICS, good to have 40% of assets in gold if possible to back the play money. I'm not going to give anybody any prescriptions, but on how much of anything they should put into anything else. But like I think it's also I don't think if this was Andy Scheckman, which one of those guys, but they said, how much should I put in gold and silver? He says, how much do you want to keep? How much of your purchasing power do you want to keep? So I am heavily weighted. Let's just put it that way. Kanzi says, sweet. How does any of these items work? Gold, silver work with airport security? Now I can, like I said, we were just talking about this because it's going to be wildly different internationally. So you'll have to do your research if you're traveling internationally. In the US, you can take any amount of gold, silver, and currency and your own belongings, cash. You might get pulled aside and ask some questions or whatever, but as far as I know, there is no restriction on traveling with your own personal property, and you don't have to tell them why you have it. But like we know with police and cops do with everything else, it doesn't mean you're not going to get a huge hassle because of it. So I would try to have a story. I'd be like, man, I've been collecting this over the years. How else am I supposed to get it? I'm not going to drive it, you know? But do your research, because all that stuff can change in a moment's notice, He says, I'll give you advice. I do 1/3 gold, 1/3 silver, 1/3 Bitcoin. I do think there's a place, obviously, for cash as well. I've said this, and specifically literal cash, because of any disruptions that we could have in the banking system or just the communication system. Even if the banking system was working fine, it's not a banking crisis. If we have cyber attacks, if we have power outages, if we have EMPs, grid down events of any kind, even just bank runs, even if the system's working fine, but people decide to go pull out all the money, all that stuff could seize up. So cash, physical cash. You don't have too much, though, because of the inflationary environment. I thought it was 10K cash max. I don't believe there are a lot of 10K rules specifically to do with banks reporting. I'm talking about like there's no legal limitation on like it's illegal to travel with any amount of money that you own. But it's like I said, that doesn't mean you're not going to get in trouble. And even when driving and stuff, we see that there's like civil asset forfeiture and stuff like that. So I can't say it's without risk. I'm just saying, according to the letter of the law, shouldn't be a problem. But how well has that worked out for everybody? Yeah, and like you're saying, there might be some kind of paperwork, but it's not like a law. You can't do it, or it's illegal, or whatever. And that might always be changing. So I would definitely get consultant for that if you're planning on having to do that. I wasn't stopped at the Canadian Toronto airport for having 10K in my stash bill. Cool. Keep a month's worth of cash. I think that's smart. I would, if possible, even more is probably better. But like I said, then you're losing whatever you have, 10, 20% a year of it to inflation, which is pretty rough. Definitely buy ammo. Yeah, and like someone said, I don't know what the specific differences are, but I know there's a lot of differences too with jewelry. Like, so you're much less likely to get stopped or even questioned if you have like a big Mr. T gold chain, even though it might be like 20 ounces of gold. It won't even, it might not even think to say anything about it. But bring a bunch of funny gambling casino shirts and they won't ask. Yeah, I mean, especially here out in Vegas. If you're traveling to Vegas, they're not going to ask in general for the most part. It's not that weird. But yeah, I'm also on the Trump train because I don't want to end up in the gulag. And like I've said before, I think I mentioned this in my last live stream. I was getting a little sick and tired of these people who were like, I'm sitting out because Trump isn't perfect. And I'm like, if you want to say that you think that Trump is, for some reason that's important to you, unfit to hold the office of president of the United States, that's your decision. And you can, I'd be willing to talk to you about that, whatever that is. But I think there is definitely a difference between the lesser of two evils and letting perfect be the enemy of the good. And especially when you're saying, I would rather, I'm just probably going to end up in the gulag because Trump did these few things wrong. And so I'm not going to vote for him. Or he's too cozy with Israel, so I'm not going to vote with him. Or I don't like the way he handled COVID and he should have done all these things and he's not going to be. There's a lot of flaws. He's a flawed human. And it's kind of to our shame as a country that Trump has been the best president that we've had in at least 50 years, probably a lot more than that. But he still has been the best president. And I think it's crazy to not vote for him because, in my opinion, he is not the lesser of two evils. He's not an evil. He is flawed, but they are not deal breakers to me. And what's most important is he's shown an ability to change his mind, to listen to, advisors and stuff. And I do think, and I'm certainly hoping that he's learned from these types of mistakes. And just some of the things alone, like just like I said, just not having, I'm not the type of person to vote against someone per se. I will only vote for someone if I think they've at least crossed the minimum threshold of being worthy of holding that position, which I think Trump has. He's demonstrated that. He's the only president. Just the fact that he's been the only president that we, in my lifetime, to not get us involved in any new wars is enormous. That's huge. And then to realize that he recognizes the destruction that's happening in our health and food system, to get RFK Jr. and stuff on board on that, to realize that he is not going to weaponize the justice system against I mean, I wish he would honestly against some of his he needs to, what's good for the goose needs to be good for the gander too. But and even if he is overly supportive of Israel, I think he's the most reluctant person that we have ever had and will have at this point to get involved in any further wars. And I think his tough talk is part of his negotiation process and is not directly indicative of how likely he is to actually go to war with Iran. So yeah, I definitely disagree with people who say that they're just going to sit that out. I'm like, well, all right, see you in the gulag. Just because you didn't like the way Trump handled COVID, or that he hasn't denounced the vaccine. Like, yes, these are mistakes. Anyone who we could vote for, we could have Ron Paul for president right now, and he would still have making some mistakes. Does that mean we wouldn't be better than the alternatives? No. So when we have an opportunity to have someone who is just like literally might be life or death better than the alternative, and in my opinion, is not an evil person, it's just a flawed person, then it's a no-brainer. Have to vote. And I think early voting is smarter this time too. So we go, man. Gold and silver heading higher tonight again. Yeah, because we're lead. I think it's going to be a, like I said, ramping up until the BRICS meeting, where I think a lot of people will take some profits. I don't think it'll be like a crash. I think it'll probably retrace back to, somewhere around the 2,500 or maybe below it. I'm hoping silver gets cheaper too. I'm already slightly more weighted in silver, but I do think there's more potential upside, but I try to keep it relatively even. But I think the gold and silver stocks are what really could blow up when it finally, because they have not been keeping up. Like the prices of gold and silver stocks are, if you were to be told that based and then found out later that gold and silver is at, or that gold at least is at a literal all-time high, what's going on? So I think that is still a great place to be, but I'm not an expert on that, so I'm not going to give you specific choices. Talk about supply networks here in the desert if the grid goes down. What type of supply networks are we talking about? I mean, in general, the whole idea of prepping and preparedness is to be able to deal with supply networks going down, whatever the reason is. Out here, obviously, the big issue is water. You got to store water and have at least some places scoped out for emergency resupply, even if that's just the Bellagio fountain, the lakes, Lake Mead, whatever, got to know where that stuff is for absolute emergencies. But yeah, so I mean, the desert isn't really any specific issues other than, which particular resources will become harder to get or more valuable. St. George, Utah. Yeah, it's the same kind of thing. I mean, water is going to be big for you, but in general, that's what prepping is being ready to deal with breaks in the supply chain. So find out how much you use. Like I said, I think the great place to start for most people is 3 months of whatever, 3 months water, 3 months food. And there's no real reason to go beyond 3 months in any category until all your categories are there. But if we can look back at all the way things have gone down recently, but historically too, but especially recently, power is a big one for the hurricanes, for brownouts, for civil unrest and war, like in Ukraine. Power generation. Put the link to the Oupes Mega one that I've been using. That thing has been great. You don't have to get that one, but I definitely recommend some kind of power generation, because especially now, like I always say, prepping, the standard of prepping, basically the gold standard, is to be able to maintain your lifestyle throughout any disruption. And none of us can sustain our current lifestyle without electricity. And I think a lot of us have even forgot how much we use electricity for even minor things. And I'm going to be doing a video soon on some things you might not have thought of, put in like a Faraday cage, because all these things we use electricity for. And communications is another big one. That's my weakest area. I need to get more communications because we're so reliant on it, we don't even realize. Like, you have ever had your internet go out for a while, and you're just like, because you don't even realize how much you do that just to look up things, contact people, buy things, sell things, everything we do, banking, whatever, it relies on the internet to some extent. Richard says, I carry all my money and never had a problem with silver when they look at seeing it on the X-ray machine. Yeah, it's good. So yeah, so in the desert, like I said, just water. And if you are worried about Park City or St. George, I mean, isn't going to be as hot as like Vegas or um, Phoenix, but you still might want to have some small fans or evaporative coolers or something depending on how able you are to deal with the heat. But like I mentioned in one of my previous live streams too, and people are like, what are you going to do when there's no AC? And I'm like, it's brutal. It's uncomfortable, but people have been living in these places like Kuwait and the Middle East, and there's been Indian tribes out here in the desert for thousands of years. You can deal with it if you know a few things to do, Just take a nap during the hottest part of the day, that sort of thing. Know where your water's at, etc. So it's not a death sentence. But looks like, oh, good. Jets are up 15-6. Holding strong. So what else we got? I'll probably wrap it up here pretty soon. Got to eat some food too. But do you guys have any? We're at 45 minutes in. So if you guys have any, so next, someone send me an email reminder. So next week I want to do a meme drop too on the live stream. That's been requested. It's fun. There's been a lot of funny ones out there recently. Right, air conditioning is a luxury, certainly not a necessity. It takes a lot of power. I have a small, like a swamp cooler, basically evaporative cooler. Does use a little bit of water. Works pretty well out here where it's dry. Can easily drop the temperature of a room or at least when you're in its direct path, like 15 degrees, which can be a lifesaver when you're trying to sleep and stuff. And takes a far, far less power than an actual air conditioning unit. It has a compressor. The only, like I said, the only downside is that it does take some water, which is already depleted here. But it'll probably feel worth it. And you can use gray water for it. You can use your water or something, and then when it's tainted to where you couldn't drink with it or cook with it, you could still put it in the evaporative cooler. So maybe after you take a shower, put that water in the evaporative cooler. What's up, SPQR? Says, I've been saying for years, laminated memes will be the currency of choice in the wasteland. Yeah, definitely. Passing out the memes. Emergency survival tips says, I have a kidney disorder. If I sweat too much, I die. So AC is needed. Wow, that's ouch. Make sure you're drinking plenty of water. I've been a long time since we had the memes of the week. This was fun. Yeah, exactly. I didn't stop for any particular reason, so I need to start that up again. You need some badass Rule the Wasteland t-shirts. Oh, why don't you check out rulethewasteland.com, or even beneath this video, there should be or at least beneath, I don't know about the live streams, beneath the other one, there's a Teespring, I think it's called, where I have Rule the Wasteland shirts, and I have Kildo's shirts. And I even got a hot chick on Fiverr to model them for me on rulethewasteland.com, some Venezuelan chick. That sort of thing is my bag, baby. Crazy Heathen says, all my Michigan people make sure to vote. Yes, big time. And also check out Elon Musk's petition. He's giving away like $1 million a day randomly to people who have just signed his petition for like voter, I forget what it's to collect email addresses and stuff like that, but just find out where that is. And if you get people signed up, you can get like $47 for each person you get signed up. And then every day he's giving away $1 million to someone in swing states. So I think Nevada's one of them, I think. Definitely Pennsylvania and a few, I think maybe Georgia, but definitely Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Nevada, and all these swing states. So definitely look into that. I have the Killdozer shirt, wear it around normies. Excellent. I looked up the site and see no merch. Which site? Rule the Wasteland? So it's is my site down? rulethewasteland.com. And then you go down and it says kits, Wasteland Designs apparel, fire, and stickers. And then it says, wait, let me see the chick there. Where are you? You not seeing the merch? Can everyone else see the website? That petition has got to be illegal. I don't think it is. I mean, I honestly don't like that sort of stuff is legal in our voting system, but it's been abused for years by all these, George Soros types. So it's great to get somebody on our side who can just be like, fuck it, here's $100 million, boom. And because you're paying people to sign the petition. You're not paying them to register to vote or to register to vote Republican, or certainly not paying them to vote, and definitely not paying them to vote any particular way. So this petition's open to people who are know they're going to vote for Kamala too, and just want to get a chance at the $1 million. So yeah, Wisconsin people definitely. Pennsylvania is the biggest, most important one, I think. No, Wisconsin and Michigan are huge. That and Georgia right behind that probably. And it's gonna be interesting, man. They're definitely desperate. We're feeling the desperation. But that's good in one way, but it's also extremely, extremely dangerous. I just see wrestling guy. Wrestling. What are you putting in the right website? What website are you going to? I'm a wrestling guy. You spelling? Post the link of where you're, of what you're actually going to. Us Wisconsin people want to rezone Milwaukee as part of Illinois. Yeah, exactly. Got to take back same thing that they need to get the Somalis from taking over in Minnesota. Can a couple people go check out rulethewasteland.com and make sure you're seeing the same things I am? Rule the Waste. Wrestling guy. Definitely not the right link. So here we'll go www.rulethewasteland.com. Oh, does that not work because it's not a HTTP? You stupid Google. It's working fine. Okay, good. So I think you might have fat fingered something. Nobody. If you're seeing a wrestling guy and you're not seeing my Mamacita with my shirt. See it fine. Okay, good. Everyone go there to make sure it's working and then buy a bunch of stuff to make sure it's working. Actually, I will have you guys know, I'm completely sold out of these. Some maniac, I hope it was an actual maniac and not just a misclick, bought 30. It was everything I had in stock on Amazon. So I have more coming in and more going to Amazon. And so you can still buy a couple because there's some on their way. But if you buy some on the website right now, there will probably be about a week delay where I can ship them out because I am waiting on stuff coming in. But you will still get your full SHTF money back guarantee, where if you buy a Rule the Wasteland Survival Fishing Kit, even the micro survival, I do have some of these left, but I'm out of the deluxe for now. They're back ordered, if you will. But if you buy either one and you die during any apocalypse, any SHTF, I'll give you a full refund. Can't beat that. Are your t-shirts heat transfer vinyl patches, stickers? No, they are the normal process. What do they call that? It's not just ironed on. They're made by a third-party company. I don't even have them here. They're made to order. So it's the screen printing. That's what it's called. They're screen printed like almost every single other graphic shirt that you get. Screen print. So they're not ironed on. And they've lasted pretty well. I have a few, if you've seen me wear them, they're finally starting to wear out the designs. But those are years old. And like I said, you can get them through if you go to all my videos, probably not the live stream, but any of my other videos, YouTube is partnered with, I think it's Teespring. They have really good shirts there too. Right beneath the video, you should be able to go through the shirts there. At least the Rule the Wasteland. Yeah, the money back guarantee is good. Northwest Montana represents. All right. You got to kick all those Yellowstone fans out of there and get your home prices back to normal. Anywhere near Oshkosh. Bagosh at Rule the Wasteland. So. Oh, yeah, the mask. Maybe you see the mask, man. You got to scroll down. I mean, if you just open the thing, It'll just be the logo and then some pictures, but you got to scroll down to see my mujer. Going to watch your poor man's nuclear war survival video as soon as this is over. Cool. I think that video is decent. It's doing well. I think it's important information. So I appreciate it. I have 2 Your Killdozer shirts in the UK. Hell yeah, man. Appreciate it. Get the contact info for the chick in the t-shirt. Yeah, right. Hablar español. She's in Venezuela. Probably not the safest place to be right now. Screen printed shirts are long lasting and durable if you take proper care of them to avoid crack, peeling, faded ink. Don't wash screen printed garments in hot water. Avoid bleach. Cool. I always use cold water simply because I don't feel like it makes that much of a difference, and it saves a lot of energy, a lot of electricity. So it must have some specific reason. And with anything that would bleed colors and stuff like that, it tends to be more gentle on it. Use cold water, but I just do it because you save a lot of money. Reminds me, look for ballistic hockey mask. Yeah, I got to get like heat. I just released a video on avian flu. Interesting. I'll have to check that out. Sí, yo hablo español. Muy bueno. Yo hablo solo 20 palabras. I need more though, so I can talk to the mamacitas. Need many more palabras. Need a snuggle buddy when the group exactly. Need someone to cook you some anything. Get some molcajete action. Wash inside out on a low temp. All right, this isn't we're not turning this into a Mormon housewife channel, all right? Appreciate the laundry advice though. Tell it to my woman. Everything goes in the same bin. Stick with the earth tones. You don't have to worry about bleeding. Colors bleeding. Yeah, we always need a battle buddy. Hola, mamacita, damn. Yes, see. I know how to say me das tu número. That's what is your number? We're actually gonna have your number, right? Me das. And oh, how are we doing on this Jets game? We're about to be halftime, so I think we just avoided. Oh no. I think they got on like the 1 yard line. I got a Russian stream going, and for whatever Putin's sending to me, it's like 2 minutes behind always what's actually happening. So I'll have my friend text me and be like, "Oh, yeah," and I'm like, what? Got to wait like a full 2 minutes. So we'll see where we're at. We're doing replays right now. Holding steady, fairly ahead. I like what I've seen so far. So, can you make a future video on how to pack like a prepper for a plane trip? Sure. Yeah, actually, I recently did have to travel, and I had a video already like written down about like self-defense options specifically for places where you can't, you know, for like concerts and traveling's a big one too. So yeah, there are definitely some. So yeah, that's something I would definitely break down. Make a video on soon. Prepping while traveling. Because it does severely limit you, obviously, in certain ways, but there's definitely options. You guys ever go to Fireline in Appleton on the tall, fat Tucker with the with the Beta MagFed AR? Anyone learning Spanish as a second language? I would like a recommendation for Spanish software. I mean, I'm on a multi-year quest where I'm learning Spanish. I don't feel like Duolingo works very well. Finding some person or people where you can actually just talk is the most effective way. They've done studies, and you have to have like an immediacy, an urgency, and like repetition. And it makes sense because when you think, I've never understood why when you go into like a high school or college class to learn a foreign language, where you get backwards. You learn all the words you learn all the grammar and stuff like as you're going. Whereas when you're in real human being learning the language of whatever you normally speak, the way I learned English, let's say, you don't learn it by like teaching you the grammar first. You just learn a bunch of words and you say them like a simpleton, where you're like saying it wrong, wrong order, wrong tense, but then you know all the words. And then you start to figure out like how they fit together grammatically correctly, how to use a proper tense, better vocab, things like that. So I've always thought it was just weird and nonsensical to always classes always focus on grammar and conjugations when you don't even know 20 words. And I'm like, you can even just do a thought exercise and imagine like someone who knows, if you were to like matrix in knowledge into your brain, like, and you had the choice between 1,000 words of Spanish with no grammar knowledge whatsoever versus perfect grammatical knowledge of how to use the words, but you only know 200 or 250 words. The person who has 1,000 words or 2,000 words or whatever is going to have a far, far better time communicating and will pretty quickly be able to learn how to say it properly, than vice versa. Then the person who grammatically knows how to use the words but doesn't know very many is not going to be able to communicate at all. They'll say a couple sentences perfectly and that's it. So I definitely think it would, this is just a theory, you know, you can go get it peer reviewed if you want, or you can communicate exclusively in memes and making eyes at the mamacitas. But I definitely very strongly believe that just learning a bunch of words and then speaking them as often as possible is the better way to do it. So there's one that I was looking at, I think it's called Jump Speak, which I haven't used yet, which is much more related or much more based on verbal than like Duolingo. And also Duolingo comes after you like a jilted ex-lover if you leave it alone for 2 days. It's like harasses and stalks you. I actually speak fluent Spanish. Excellent. That's useful. Wishing you well, Eric. Keep making videos. They're vital in these times. I look forward to your next podcast. Awesome, man. I appreciate it. Spanish is hard for me because my memory sucks. I mean, yeah, you really have to initially rely on memory to learn a language, but eventually, obviously, I don't think any of us, like there's some pretty stupid people out there who, they still speak their language. They still have at some point memorized thousands of words. English, I think, has something like we have way more words than most other languages, which does allow for, it's very good when you're trying to be descriptive about complex topics, but it's not great when you're trying to learn it. And I think with English, we have very inconsistent rules, contradictory rules. So it would be very difficult to learn. But if you do know it, I think it's very good for expressing complex ideas. But you can't just memorize words in all your short-term memory and learn language that way unless you're like that Brain Man guy. But eventually those have to become neural pathways that are permanent in your long-term memory. And immersion, yes. Yeah, exactly. Once you get to like a basic level of like a few hundred words, to take it to the next level, you want to immerse yourself and just use it as much as possible in ways that you're forced to use it. Because the studies that they have done have shown that like when you're forced to use it, that's when it like anchors into your brain. Some topics on prep or plane travel are length of your trip, weather conditions, destination, airlines. Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily specifically focus on planes. That would be one of them for sure. But that's an option. You could always drive and things too. And especially as they get more and more tyrannical with travel. I know some Latin, which is mostly useless nowadays. Yeah, unless you're like Doc Holliday wants to flex in front of Johnny Ringo. It's like in vino veritatis. Here's Mr. Ringo is an educated man. Now I really hate it. How do you pack light, roll your clothes, pack the proper essentials? Yeah, packing light always is not necessarily automatically necessary, because if you're talking about traveling within a non-SHTF environment and just wanting to be prepared in case there is an SHTF environment, I've always thought the focus on like really cutting down on weight in the beginning is not necessary. I think it's much more important to have your stuff packed in a way that you can ditch the non-essential stuff quickly without having to like sort through it. But if you have like 4 suitcases and you're traveling, it doesn't really matter as long as you have a system set up for if there is an SHF, how you can triage, boom, this is the one I'm taking, leaving those. You know what I mean? So you don't necessarily have to just automatically pack super ultralight. Why can't you wrap tinfoil in a shoebox with a removable top and use that as a Faraday cage? You can. You can. You absolutely can. You want to make sure there has to be consistent contact between the aluminum foil all the way around, or seams can be really bad for the EMF entering if there's a breach. It's actually worse to have a long, thin gap than even a modest or moderately sized hole. So I would still, if you have a flexible lid like that with the aluminum foil, I would still put something on it that would press, like the rubber bands or something that would push the aluminum foil against itself. The problem with aluminum foil is not that it doesn't work, it's that because of its physical properties, it's very prone if you're like taking a lid on and off repeatedly or flexing it repeatedly, it tears very easily, it gets little micro holes very easily. It's just kind of brittle. So if it's something that you're going to be doing repeatedly, I would still use the EMF fabric for this end, but you can do something similar. But and aluminum foil is not particularly cheap, especially if you get the industrial thicker stuff, which is going to last longer anyway. And you can get, like, if you go back to that video that I just did on my secret weapon for preparing for EMP, that EMF cloth, you can get pretty small pieces of it fairly cheap, 15, 20 bucks, which is not really that much more expensive than aluminum foil. And it's a lot more resilient for compared to minor use things like that. You can flex it and rub it repeatedly without destroying it, which aluminum foil pretty quickly develops holes and tears. I do miss your old school vids where you went over locations to not live in during SHTF. Your anti-Jack Spirko rants were also good. I only had one anti-Jack Spirko rant. I do not dislike Jack Spirko. We had a little spat over some nonsense that I think he was being unreasonable. But he has great material. I continue to recommend him, and I still reference his commonality, preparedness, and all his stuff. And he's done great things for the prepping community. I think I've had far more pro Jack Spirko rants than anti ones. Thank you for commenting on travel like a prepper. Yeah, I'll definitely. I wrote that down. That's on the list. Yeah, I am going to eat soon. But if you guys have any good questions, so what's up? Oh, you tacked them up and said, "What's up, chat?" Yeah, so I am cutting off. Like I said, it's going to be 7 o'clock. I'll be cutting off soon. But to re-summarize, I'd appreciate if you guys would go ahead and just finger my like button. Give me a gentle diddling on the like button. Makes me feel good. And just to recap everything, like I said, end of the month, one Patreon subscriber will be getting this sweet Lee Who's hand crank radio with emergency weather radio, AM, FM, flashlight, siren, a throwable or passive fire extinguisher, and an emergency light for your phone jack, all in one lucky winner. So check out the Patreon. And we talked about the BRICS meeting that's happening basically 22nd to 24th in Russia, where I do think that they're going to be giving a lot of information about the technical elements, I think, of the BRICS unit system. Back end stuff is my suspicion. So I think that there will be a sell the news type situation where the run up in gold because of this meeting, people will take profits. Tickling my like button. I appreciate it. Thank you. Just don't like tickle it so much that you unclick it. Remember to leave an odd number. You want an odd number of clicks. Click it as much as you want, as long as you leave on an odd number. But yeah, so I think that we could see a potential short-term sell-off unless they come out and are like full-blown dollar, BRICS is where it's at, gold-backed, suck it, in which case it could all be off to the races, blast off time in terms of gold and silver prices. But I don't suspect that's going to be the case just yet. I think it'll be a pretty uninteresting, mostly technical, boring type stuff about the system, about how they plan to implement it, about how maybe some time frames, rules about how companies can enter or apply for membership, that sort of thing. But definitely keep an eye on it. So, but keep an eye on the gold and silver prices, and you may get a decent buying opportunity. I don't think it'll go down to like 2,000, but it might go back down to 2,500 or something like that, or maybe $100 come off it as some people try to take some profits. But that might just be in paper too, and not in the physical. But I appreciate you guys watching, and We'll be back next week on live stream, and I should have some videos, non-live videos on the channel up in the meantime. The moral villains can't get together without fighting. It's like a dysfunctional family trying to start a business. Yeah, and that's honestly beneficial. They're not super streamlined. But there is some desperation there. But I appreciate you guys watching. Stay safe, stay prepared, and we'll see you next time.